This video is supported by EmuDB, the lightweight, high-speed immutable database for systems and applications.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Moshix mainframe channel. This is Moshix. You can't really say mainframe without saying Cobol, and today we're going to be looking at writing a Cobol program that creates the payroll report or something very similar to that you see on the screen. This would be a very typical report from the 60s and 70s or even 80s. I saw plenty of those where you see data being formatted in a way that looks and screams mainframe in a way, and creates this tabular format, and that's what we're going to create today. Now, the interesting thing about Cobol, and especially the Cobol that we can use with MVS 3.8 that we have in the TK4 distribution for the community, or TK4 minus to make the purists happy, is that it's a very old Cobol compiler. It's from 1972, and that was already the last version of it, the MVT compiler, Cobol compiler. And even though it's very old, 50 years old next year, it's still capable. And especially the one thing that I liked about the Cobol compiler is that it has a report writer feature. Yes, it has a complete report writer inside the Cobol compiler, and we're going to be looking at how to use it effectively in this video today. Whenever it comes to finding out more about the MVT Cobol compiler from 1972, and again, that's the very last version IBM made of that particular compiler. Of course, they still make Cobol compilers today, but as it, it's obviously a very old compiler. You can find some manuals here and there on beat savers. However, Jay Mosley's amazing website has everything we need to learn about how to use the Cobol report writer. And he says himself, people ask if the report writer is present in MVT Cobol, and he says yes, of course it is. And then he goes about explains how to use the Cobol compiler to create a customer charge report. And we're going to use it slightly different so we can learn, but the report writer is powerful. It has its own section within the Cobol code, and then you basically tell it things like, what is the header, what are the headers for all pages, what is the header for the first page, the last page. You even have page counters, line counters, variables inside the report that you can use within the Cobol code. And then you specify certain fields and you populate those with the data from the variables you have in your Cobol program, and then you basically build your report as you go and process data in your Cobol program. So what I thought we'll do is we just write a Cobol program from scratch. So this is going to be not one of your shortest videos in this channel, but if people want to play with Cobol and learn it, especially on the mainframe, especially maybe create reports with it, then they can pause and restart the video as they create their own reports in Cobol on MVS 3.8. So that's what we're going to do today. And we're going to do it block by block or section by section within the Cobol code. And before we get there, I just want to say one thing. There's many Cobol programmers in the world today that at one point were real good Cobol programmers on the mainframe. I'm not one of those. I was never a Cobol programmer myself. I was primarily a PL1 and some assembler programmer, and I did once a 4-day introductory course in Cobol in the 80s, but I did very light Cobol programming back then. I may have written less than 2,000 lines of productive Cobol code in my whole life. So I'm not an expert in this, and if you see me doing stupid things, then have fun and enjoy me being making a fool of myself. But we're going to get the Cobol report up and running. This I promise. A little bit about the environment. So I'm going to have, of course, be working with TK4 update 8, as you can see here. Then I have the amazing Herc print by Soft Dev Labs. This amazing utility, which you should all go and buy. It's an amazing program, which by the way, he has a trial. This is by Fish, the main developer of Hyperion. And what it does is it's a utility that allows you to create beautiful printouts. And not only I can create beautiful printouts, as you just saw in the report, I also have the 1403 font for Windows. So this is the typical 1403 font. I bought it and installed it on my system so that we can create very authentic looking reports and printouts on our system. So then of course those all get printed out from MVS on what it thinks is a real printer, and then this utility connects to it and allows me to get those reports here on my computer. So let's get to it. Let's create a payroll report. And of course we need some JCL around it, and we're going to start with the JCL so you can see how to build the JCL to compile, link, and start a Cobol program all in one JCL job. So here I have, of course, my normal Vista TN3270 terminal connected to my MVS on TSO. We're going to do this all interactively. We could do it in batch, of course, since this is all batch. But let's look at the JCL. So, of course, I want to first have the job specification. We're going to run the Cobol procedure for compiling and go. As you know, there is a slight bug in the Cobol that we have in TK4 update 8, which is going to be fixed in the next update whenever that comes out, where we can't really produce the XREF, which would be very useful to have, but unfortunately we run out of memory even with 8 megabytes region, which is the maximum we can run in TK4 update 8 before we hit the line, and so we can't run the cross-reference, but this will be the minimum job card and the execution card to get the source code in. So we would just put in the source code in the same JCL stream here just to make things very simple. But of course we also need the end of the job, which we put in right here. Actually, we put in a bit more space like this. Voila, so that's the full JCL to get a Cobol compiled and started and executed right away. Of course, we're going to put in a CCU dump here in case we get a dump, which is very common with Cobol. One of the things I want to show with this Cobol video in general is that Cobol to an assemble programmer like me looks very, very similar to assembler, and that's one of the surprising things for a lot of people. They think Cobol is a very high level language, which of course it is. It is one of the highest level languages. It has over 600 keywords, but at the same time it reminds me constantly of assembler. It's very, very similar to assembler, and I will point throughout the video here and there where I see those similarities to mainframe assembler. So in between here, this job card and this job card is where we're going to put our source code for the video. So let's get started. I think what we can do actually is we can hide all this so that we can just focus on the part of the part that we want to see. Something like that. Alrighty. So let's get started with the very beginning of a Cobol program, and we'll go through these divisions in the Cobol program. First of all, in Cobol, you should know that there are position is important. These will be line numbers, which will make it easy for us to find out if we're doing things in the right order. If you have an asterisk in this column here, then it automatically becomes a comment line. And then you can start write code from here, and then there is an A section which starts about here, where we have certain code that needs to go into that section. We'll look at it when we get there, but I'm assuming that you have seen some Cobol code before. So identification division We call this payroll. Date written, date compiled. The interesting thing here is that even if we change this we could put in here March or June, but when the Cobol compiler then looks at this in the output, you will see that it will automatically insert the right date. So that's very funny that it changes the source code in the listing with the right date. The environmental division, we're going to say we run this on IBM 370, and so that's the very beginning of our Cobol report. All right, so the next section now will be to look at in Cobol, we'll have to assign a file descriptor to the files we want to process. So the data sets on disk, in our case, could be tape, of course, or anything. And there's some peculiarities about how to name those within Cobol so that Cobol knows what we're dealing with. So this next section is called the input-output section. Like this, input-output section, file control, and that's where we connect descriptors to the real data set. So we say here in data description, in DD and sysprint. So if I show you the data set where we actually have going to have our input, we'll look into that a little bit later. It's called go for the go step, and then INDD, and we also have a sysprint called go.sysprint, and that just goes to the printer because we're going to get it here on our PDF. So to connect this data set here, which exists in our case on DASD, on a disk, on direct access device, we're going to have to call this DA for direct access sequential INDD. So the name that you're going to give it here has to tell the Cobol compiler where it is and how it's organized. And print will be unit recording because character devices such as punch, card reader, and printer are called unit recording devices, and of course also as for sequential sysprint. So this is how we connect the file descriptor that we have here to the real DDs here, data description cards that we have in the JCL. Okay, this is crucial to understand that this here is this, and of course it's in the go step, but we need to tell the Cobol compiler it's direct access, so it's on disk, it's not tape or anything, and it's sequential. It's not a partition data set or anything like that. And then the sysprint is going to be connected here in our case. I'm just giving it the record format and the record length just to make the output look nicer, but it doesn't really matter. But you could just say sysout equals asterisk, and that's it. So this is how we connect these two things. So let's make now this block of code invisible again, so we can just focus on our Cobol code, and let's get to the next section where we now start to look at the how the data on the disk looks like to the Cobol program. And since MVS, so the mainframe general, is a record-oriented operating system, let's go look at the input data so we know how to deal with the record structure inside our Cobol program. So we go here, and I created a data set called HERC01 salaries.input, and we look at it, and what we have here is this structure where we have an employee ID, unique employee ID at this position. So this is a fictitious company, and that's the payroll, and so here we have the name of the employees. To make it simple, I omitted here the middle names, which to Americans, of course, when you have a name without middle name, it would look weird because everybody here has a middle name. In other countries, like in Europe, very few people have a middle name, so it would look more familiar to them. And then here would be the monthly salary, and our job is to calculate the wage taxes and then the total company expense on a cumulative basis until the very end, where we know exactly how much the company has to pay in that particular month, the expense for the workforce in that month. So we have here a list of names, and we have about 133 names, and I created 133 for a particular reason. I wanted the report to go into several pages so we could see how to play with the page setup in the report writer of the MVT Cobol compiler, which of course in later versions of Cobol very significantly enhanced and was improved by IBM. So this is what we're dealing with, and we see here that we have a position 0 the employee ID, at position 11 we have the name, and then at position 34 we have the monthly salary. So that's what we're dealing with, and let's go in the Cobol program and put this all here. Oops, I don't know what happened here. Okay, so we have now the data division. So before we had the identification division and the environment division, and then the configuration section, and with the file control input-output section. And now we have the data division. This is where we tell the Cobol compiler how our data is organized. And remember, whenever you program, of course, and this is almost needless to say, you're not really programming for the computer, you're programming for the compiler. So here we're telling this Cobol compiler how our data is organized. Let's go into more detail. So we have the file section, we call it salaries. Block contains 0 records, data record is salaries record, and so we basically here creating a link to this record structure. And so here we have organization of 01, which means this is a record, and you know that Cobol has levels here, 05, so 02 to 49 is the same level. Then you have 66, 77 and 88 levels. Those are all have a meaning. I'm not going to go into that now, but we're just going to get a report working here. We have an employee ID at level 5. We have the name, because remember, ID, names, monthly salary, the salary, and then reserved. We use this to complete an 80 bytes record, since the data set is an 80 fixed record length. We're going to have to complete a full 80 bytes record here in the construction of the record. So we have 10 for the employee ID, because it goes from 0 to 10, and then we have 23 for the name, because it goes from here to 34, and then at 34 we have the salary, which is 4 bytes long in our case here, and then we complete the records all the way to 80 bytes. So that's what's going on here in this section. So up to here this was pretty common. So now comes the part where we start to see the peculiarities of the report writer. And oops. So here we have a file descriptor for the report file. Label records are omitted, and report is called the salaries report. So that's for now where we create a descriptor for the report that's going to be printed out, in our case on the sysprint, which again is going to go on 1403 printer, the printer that MVS knows as the real printer, where we connect over a socket our HercPrint utility that I showed at the beginning of the video, which then produces the PDF, this beautiful looking report with the 1403 font. So this is the part where we start to see the report writer. Now let's look at the report writer itself. Just realize we need some variables to work with, so that's going to be the working section, working storage. And in Cobol, of course, working storage section is the stack, basically the variables of our Cobol program. So I'm going to be needing some variables. I want to run a total of the wages of the payroll for the company, including tax. Then we calculate tax and the tax on top of the wages, and then only the tax component of it. And we need some way to control when we run the end of the input So we just have some variables here to control end of input, so we know when the last record was read in. So with this, I think we have the very beginning of the program. I don't think we need any more variables. If we need more, then we can put them in later. Okay, so this is the fun part now. Let's scroll down maybe to here, so we have some more space on the screen. And let's look at the report section. So a lot of people didn't know this section existed within the MVT Cobol compiler, but it does exist. It's called the report section, RD, report descriptor, I think. Salaries report, that's how we're going to call it. Page limit is 66 lines because we used the 1403 printer. Heading is at 1, first detail on line 5, last detail on 58. And let's go look at the documentation, that's the amazing documentation that Jay Mosley has put together. So we have here some field constants and names, customer number. Well, that's how he's building his own report, but here's the description. So we have the full description of what we can put in the report section, the report name. We need to give it a unique identifier, of course, and this is how we, first of all, we kind of tell it how to do the page breaks. At 66, that's when it will automatically spool forward to the next page, and we tell it where the first detail is on every page, the heading, the first detail, last detail, and the footing. So we could put in here for each page what is the footer, and as the report progresses through as it's being created, the Cobol compiler automatically updates certain variables such as the line counter, so we know exactly on which line we are. The page counter is also updated, and so this lines are being kept up to date within the Cobol program itself. So you start to see here that it's really quite amazing that the Cobol compiler already can see in the source code how the report is being built, and you have this lines that you can use in your report. So you don't need to know how many input records you have, because you have those variables that the report writer provides to you to keep track of where you are. So so that's the great thing about this report writer. I really like this. So there we go. Now we start to have to build the layout of our report. Let me make this a little bit smaller so we can put it next to the source code. Let's put it up here. So that's how we're going to put it in our report here. And let's build the layout. Alrighty, so what do we have here? We have at this line here, this card, we have the page head. So the type is page heading. So this is going to be on every page and of the report, so that even if we have more than one page, this is what we're going to see on each and every page. On line 1, we put in the title of the report, payroll report for BIM Corporation. And remember that in this Cobol, very old Cobol, we have to put in a full stop at the end of each line, of each logical line. Then we have here, and so we build the same record structures like we do with the, like in the working storage division. You can see here the same organization. So it's very simple to follow. So we say line +1. On line 1 we put in the report. Line +2 we start to put in the headers of the report. And so just if you want to look at again how this is going to look more or less, we're not going to build the exact same report, but something very similar. So if you want to see, we're going to have here the employee ID, then the employee name, the monthly salary. We're going to calculate the wage tax, the cumulative wages. It would be nice to have a page number, and so we're now building this line here. Okay, for each page, because it's going to be on follow-up pages as well. So that's how this is looking like. It's going to look like. So we put in at position 1, column 1. We put in X means string employee ID with length 8. Even though I think there's slightly more than 8, doesn't really matter. Column 10, we put in the employee name, and then column 41, because this is 25 characters or so long. At 41, we want to put in the monthly salary, monthly wage. Okay. Then we'll have to calculate, and this is not in the input data, we'll have to calculate that, the wage tax. At column 76, we put in the cumulative wages for the company, and at 100 we put in the page counter, and of course we can get this from, that's provided to us by the report writer. So you can see here, page counter is an automated counter that we use as a source data item in order to present the page number on the report. So we're going to say here at 100 put in the word page, and then at 106 put in with picture 00ZZ9. So if we only have up to 10 pages, we're going to show from 0 to 9, or from 1 to 9, and then once we go to 10 it starts to use 10, but if there is no 10 then this is just going to be empty. Just a way to format in Cobol. And we source this from the page counter, so we get this provided by the report writer itself. So that's it. And then once we have the line done, we can now start to populate that with data, right? And so we're going to put in here in column 1 X. So we're going to treat it as a string in our case here. We're going to do any transformation of this data. So we're going to say source employee ID. Where do we get this form from? We get it from the file descriptor. We take it as it is from our input data here. As it is, we'll take it in, and so we say source is the employee ID from the file section, and the same for the employee name. We're going to take it also from the file input, from the dataset input, and then we're going to put in the wage, so the salary we're going to put in also from the input dataset, but we're going to format this a little bit. We're going to put in the dollar, and we're going to have a separator for the thousands, which in our case in the US is a comma. In Europe often it's a dot to separate the thousands. We're not going to put in any cents, just to make things a little simple. Obviously in a full report we would also deal with the cents, but here the video is just for us to learn something, and I'm learning along with you here as I'm doing this. Then we're going to have the tax only, so not the salary plus tax, but just the tax component only. And then the total of salary or wage plus wage tax equals the running total for the company for each employee. So this is how we're going to format it again. So that's kind of builds the detail of the payroll report is going to build here. So that's it. That's how simple it is to design our payroll report. So now we need, of course, a part of the code that does some transformation and some additions. Very simple coding. And one thing I want to say before we get to the real code is that if I had to do this in assembler, it would look very similar. I mean, this up to me now looks very, very similar to assembler. We need to connect to the data sets. We need to have a macro that opens the data set that describes what it is. Then we need to build the data description within the assembler program that describes the input record. We need to complete it all the way to 80 bytes if this is the size of the record we'll read in. And if we had to create a report, I would create something very similar. I would create a structure that which then I can copy onto each new page. So I would build this very, very similar. I mean, some of the keywords would be different, but I don't think we would have much more code in an assembler program to compare to what you see here. So I think that I could probably, without having to learn the report writer, I could probably do this as quickly in assembler as I'm doing this in Cobol. But we're looking at Cobol here. So now that we built the report layout, Let's put in some code, and we call this, of course, the procedure division. I give it a label here, 000 initiate. So we open the this data set here for reading. Oops. Then we open the report file, which goes to sysprint. We initiate the salaries report. That's the report we need to start, which creates the layout to the Cobol compiler. And then we read in the input data set. At the end, we move Y to the end of file switch. So if you remember, we have here in the working storage section, we have here end of file switch, which starts with a value of no, but we're going to move a Y into it for yes. So it's a true or false kind of switch, Boolean kind of switch. So we know when we have processed the last record. So in our procedure division, we use this and we say open and start reading. Once we arrive at the end of the last record, move a Y into that switch, into this Boolean switch. Now, again, this reminds me very much of assembler, because in assembler we move data. So this will be a very similar instruction, almost like this would also be 3 lines in assembler, and very, very similar. And once we've done reading, we perform, so at each record we perform process transaction, and we need to write this the subroutine, so that calls our subroutine until the end of file has been reached. And then once we've finished this, until when we reach the end of file, which we know because we have this Boolean switch here, this true has been fulfilled, then we initiate the ending of the program, we terminate the report, we close the 2 file descriptors, one input, one output, and we stop run. So this is where the program stops. So this is very simple. So basically open the reports, initiate the report, go line by line or record by record from the input data set. For each line we're going to do something, and that's where the data transformation, the additions are going to be happening. Very simple. Let's declutter a little bit. Okay, so let's put in our subroutine that deals with processing each record. Oops. Okay, so here's the subroutine that we call, remember, at each record, right? It says here perform here for each record until we reach the end of the input file. We multiply the salary by, I'm just arbitrarily putting in wage tax of 43%. So so we multiply the wage by which we get from the input data set by 1.43, giving tax. Then we subtract the salary from the tax, giving only the tax portion of it. And then we add the salary to the total, to the running total, and we add the tax component only to the running total. So we get a running total which consists of the wages and the wage tax. And you can see here again, this is very similar to assembler. We would have an instruction here, very similar in assembler, the subtraction. So this would be 6 instructions in assembler, and here we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So very similar here. And then we generate the detail of the report. So once we have this input data for the report, we say generate the detail, and the detail is here. See here, salary detail. So basically at each record that we process, we're going to go and populate this record in the report. So this is the connection between the report writer and the actual procedure division in Cobol. So once we have populated these variables, we then go each input line from each input record from the data set, we then calculate these fields and then go generate the detail here, this one. And then we read the next one. At the end, we we make the switch be true, and that's the end of it. So as far as I can see, this should be the whole program. Let's save it. Let's look at everything, and now we can start to run this and see what the issues are. I haven't run this yet. So let's see. We call this P for payroll. Payroll report. Okay, so I think this should all work. Let's see where we are. And let's submit, and we should now, you should see here some new report arriving here. Pay attention, and yes, there it is. Okay, so let's look at what we have here. Oh, there's a return code 12, so that didn't go so well on the Cobol step, so there's somewhere a problem with the source code. And let's go find out where the problem is. So as you can see here, this is from May 1st, 1972, 49 years ago exactly, almost exactly, because we are April 27. So as you can see here, this automatically adapts the date to today's date. That's very, very funny. And oh, we have here one line is repeated. I can see that right off the bat. And let's see what the Cobol. Yeah, I think it doesn't like that. So let's go run this again. Where is this repeated line? We just cut the paste wrong. Yeah, I can see it. He didn't like this, of course. As you can see, we have the same line twice. That doesn't make no sense. Okay, I just got this wrong. Save and submit. And we should get the new payroll report. Here it is already. And maximize. And let's see where we are. Still return code 12. Let's see where. Oh, it looks like again we have some. Yeah, we have some issues here. And I think that's the only issue. Submap specified has occurred. Okay, yeah, I can see the error. It's correct. We copied this basically twice, so yeah, this is how this should look. And let's resubmit and keep an eye here at the bottom for the new listing to arrive. And here it is already. It's a little bit bigger, 215 kilobytes. Let's see what happened in this case. Okay, so now we only have a condition code of 4, which means there's a warning somewhere. And on the execution, return code of 0. That's already much better. Let's look a little bit what JAS2 tells us here. 125 input cards read. That's our source code and the JCL, and we produce 400. And let's see how this looks like. This ran in 1/10 of a second, of which we used 332 kilobytes of storage. So all this with 332 kilobytes of virtual memory. And this spent about about half of the time was spent in running the program, and system calls, as you will call them in Unix parlance, will be again half of that. So very, very little stuff here. Okay, so as you can see here, we're going to, for fun, we're going to change this back to 26 and then see that the compiler changes back to today's date. That's very funny. just some warnings. An intermediate result to sending field might have its high order digit. I know why this happened. Nothing really serious. And here's our report. So employee ID, employee name, monthly wage, wage tax, cumulative wages, and here the page number. And you can see the page number being updated. This is not, we don't have to do that. That's the report writing do it for us. And then we take each month, we take the monthly wage of this employee. Then we put in the wage tax of 43%, adds up for, we're now running a cumulative wage expense for the company, 4,345. And then we have the next Colby McCarty, 4,700 monthly wage tax, and now it already adds up because we take this plus this plus this, now equals 11,000. And at the end of the report, we know that this month we're going to have $876,640 in total payroll to be paid, which consists of the monthly wage for the employee plus their wage tax to be paid to the government. So now that we've got this working, let's change it a little bit so that it's when we change things that we really learn. So first, maybe we start to put in a new line here. We put it in here. I want to add 3602 tax rate, so we can put in the tax rate in the report. Pick 9, let's say 3, value 0 to begin with. And so now we have a variable where we can store the tax rate. And so at the beginning of the procedure division, we're going to put in, we're going to say move to a tax rate. Okay, so now we move the tax rate of 43% to tax rate, and now we could actually, instead of saying by 1 point, we could say tax rate giving tax, because now we have the tax rate is now a variable, and we could now also put it in here in the detail. We could put in here the tax rate somewhere where we can find space. Let's say here 438703 column, all capital. Here we're going to put it at 100. Pick X. We're going to put in 10. Source tax rate. And I know what you're thinking. Tax rate is a numeric variable, and now we're making a string. Yeah, because we don't want to have a transformation. We could also put in here 9. What was it? Tax rate is 9.3. Let's go with 4. So we're going to put in 9.4. Something like that. Let's see if this runs. Okay, new listing has arrived. Nope, it didn't calculate. There's something wrong somewhere. Yeah, space should not be moved to numeric field, substituting 0. So it's not happy at 71, which is this one. Okay, on 100. Source tax rate. Okay. Oh, because we already have, yeah, that's not going to work because we actually have the page not well. Yeah, that actually the formatting is not going to work out fine because we actually have this assigned to the page number. So let's drop the whole idea. But but let's see if this works like this. The new payroll report. Yeah. Oh, this actually didn't fly. It's still 0. So that's a good way to check on our code. Where do we deal with this? And the new listing is here. Yes, very good. So we got our report done, and we now understand how to structure all this. The important thing is to understand all the possibilities. So because there's so many things you can do, I mean, it's really quite sophisticated. So you can justify things, left aligned, right aligned. For instance, we could say argue that we want this number here to be aligned with the E here and not with this line, with this part. Now here, for instance, there's a little error. You can see our report here is printed out where the A is of wage, not where the W is, and this one starts 2 characters to the left. So let's go and fix that to see how we can fix the issues like this. So up to here it's correct, but the wage tag starts a little bit, this one starts 1 byte or 1 character to the right, and this one 2 to the left. Let's see how to go fix that. Okay, so this one makes sense because we have wage tags at 58, but here we have it at 57. So I want to say we put it at 56. Oh, no, this needs to go to 58, and this needs to go, I think, to 73. Oops. Let's run it again. Maximize. Turn code 4 and 0. That's fine. So we will have a report. No, it actually got worse. So we need to go this one left by 2 bytes now, and this one by 3. So left 2, right 3. Left 2, right 3. Let's check the new one. Return code 4 and 0, so we will see a report. Okay, yeah, now it's perfectly aligned. As the numbers grow, we're not going to be perfectly aligned. So that's where, for instance, with the adjust case will come in handy. So we'll move this one right so that we have the bigger number, especially on the later page. Actually, it comes out fine. Yeah, so it doesn't look fine for the first few numbers, but then it will be fine for the later numbers. So. Of course, we could also have a total tally here, but we already have the total on the right side. So it's important to understand. There's, the report writer understands column and has groups. It understands certain groups, so you could group things also. Let's say that every you could have departments, and every department you would have a subtotal per department and things like this. So. We could maybe do this in a later video, get like really fancy with the Cobol report writer. I myself used this for the first time. yesterday and today, so I'm just learning as you are. I'm a beginner, just like the folks who are beginners here and watching this for the first time. I'm sure there's some people who know a lot about it, and obviously Jay Mosley, somewhere he said that he was at one point at university was a maverick on the report writer, but I think that this is a very good way to get started. So let me try this one more time to write this with the 26th, let's say 25th, and let's see what what the Cobol compiler does with it. I find it very funny. In today's world, changing the source code in the listing would be a big no-no. So you can see here, change it back to 27, even though I put in 26. So I find this very funny, but this all works fine. We should, just to be correct, we should eliminate this one, the tax rate, which we not use because we have a declared variable which we don't use. Let's clean up a little bit. Where is it? And the workings, this one. Okay, so now, and I think this one could also be cleaned up a little bit. And this could also be cleaned up a little bit. Okay. I think this also can be cleaned up. Yeah, so to me this looks quite simple. I mean, it's almost like a script. It doesn't even look like a real program because our procedure division is so small because we don't have to do much. And that's the beauty of using the report writer. You only focus on the transformation of the data and the layout of the report. Everything else is very simple. So maybe I'm gonna make an additional video in the future where we get a little bit more fancy with the report writer. There's been some advancements in the report writer in recent Cobol compilers by IBM. Not that much, I think, in terms of advancements, but there's some new things went into it. But we'll focus on this compiler because that's the one that we can use in TK4-. And so if you have any questions or any features you would like to see in a follow-on video on this subject, please put the comments in the description below the video. I'm going to put the source code of this program on my GitHub repository, and I'll have a link in the description below this video so you can go and get it and put it in your TK4 and play with it. And also maybe I'll put in the input data, this one, because it's a little bit tedious to make up all this stuff here. So I'll put this also as a play input data so you can play with it and create your own report. So the link is to the GitHub repository is going to be in the description below this video. I hope you had fun playing with Cobol a little bit and see how similar it is to assembler, really, and because it is a very old programming language, not the oldest, but one of the top 10 oldest or 15 oldest programming languages. It's from I believe 59, so by now it's 62 years old, and but IBM still puts out new Cobol compilers all the time. There's object-oriented Cobol, and there's 64-bit. There's a lot of things that went into Cobol in the meantime, but Cobol is there to create business reports, to create business data, transform business data. It's excellent when it comes to batch or when it comes to online transaction processing. And maybe one of the future videos I'll show a little bit how to use KICS as well, or CICS as some people call it. But this is something we got done in how many lines? Line 1, 124 lines, including the JCL around it. So that's it. I hope you had fun building this program together with me in the video. And see you soon. Thank you very much. Goodbye.